Okay, we're going to get ready with our service. Yes, we're going to start with that. With flower petals yet. So good morning and welcome to our Vashon Island Unitarian Universalist service. My name is Julia Lakey and I'm going to be your service leader today. And if you are visiting, please participate as you feel comfortable. And you're invited to stay and introduce yourself in conversation during our refreshment time. Our congregation is committed to individual freedom of belief, welcomes diversity, seeks to promote a sense of community, and fosters religion, which enriches the spirit. We are a mostly lay-led community, strengthened and enriched by weaving together the volunteer contributions of members and friends. Our community is supported and guided by our minister, Reverend Victoria Poling. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Swabash, Coast Salish Native people. The Puyallup people have lived and stewarded these islands since the beginning of time, and they continue today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step in true allyship, and we commit to uniting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous peoples of this land and beyond. As Unitarian Universalists, we value interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. And actually, the service today is in acknowledgement of that. This is organized by the Social Justice Committee, and a couple of us, Gabe Roselle and I, are part of the environment focus. So today brings us that focus, the web of life. We covenant to cherish Earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. So, as we begin our service, please take a couple of breaths to become fully present. Relax and bring your attention into this moment of communal reflection and sharing. And now I'd like to invite Brooke Osment to light our chalice and share our chalice lighting reading.
This reading is called A Sturdy Flame by Reverend Julianne Lapp. We light this chalice with hope, a sturdy flame we nurture in these difficult times. We light this chalice with the heart of compassion for a nation divided by politics and strife. We light this chalice knowing that it will take all of us to repair this world that we live in. May we find rest, compassion, and the hope that we need to nurture ourselves and each other. May this sturdy light remind us of the people we can be and the difference that we can make in the world together.
And now our opening reading is by Gabe Roselle.
Good morning. So this is a reading I have the privilege of reading from, Sing the Salmon Home. And this poem is by Nimisha Mondal, The Search for Home. Have you ever wondered how new salmon populations come to be? Fresh rivers, now full, but once upon a time, not one salmon called them home. Queens of navigation arrived in these new homes with goals for returning home, elsewhere. Have you ever pondered on that first salmon arriving? She was most certainly looking for her birthplace, as salmon do, seeking home to birth the next generation. This was it. Was she lost? Have you ever thought to be like this first salmon, a lost one that will lead the way? Her scales will never cast a reflection upon the history books. She will only shine. Here in the river ripples, twisting and leaping, laughing as we strain to read the map before us. Wayfinding in cold waters, despair throwing barriers higher than the rapids. Unaware when the waters warmed, map frayed, beyond recognition, hope for home lost. Like our queen, we may lay down our weary load, spawning whatever will come, fading as we lay our bodies down upon the rocks, fading even as we become the first, the ancient, the ancestors to this new place. Let us seek to be like the lost salmon. Be not weary of your search for home. Search for it like it is your life's calling, for it is your life's calling. But do not despair when the home you find is not the home you left. You may indeed be destined to create new worlds, a home your kind has not yet dared to dream of.
We're so lucky to have Rowan with us before he heads off to college. Thank you, Rowan. And now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Theron Shah. Theron is the executive director of the Vashon Mori Land Trust, and he was born and raised in Ohio, visiting his grandparents on the farm that had been in the Shaw family for over 100 years. As a 17-year-old, he got his first taste of Cascadia when attending Pearson College, UWC, on Vancouver Island. And that experience rooted him in a commitment to both adventure and service and connected him deeply to the Salish Sea landscape. With a master's in public affairs, Theron brings over 25 years of experience in fundraising and nonprofit management. And he's had the honor of working with dozens of different nonprofits over the course of his career as both a consultant and team member. Theron is inspired by indigenous cultures, regenerative landscapes, and ways that our relationships with the land can help us navigate the challenges of climate change. When he's not at the Land Trust office, Theron can be found mountain biking, hiking, paddleboarding, and spending time outdoors with his family. Welcome, Theron.
Don't be nervous, there's a lot of pages here, but I really just scribbled the extra notes at the top. That shortens it down, so don't be nervous. Does anybody know that Lyle Lovett song called Church? Yeah. If the preacher preaches long enough, even he'll get hungry too. It's a great song. You should go listen to it. It's one of our favorites. Well, thank you for our land acknowledgement. Thank you, Rowan, for our music. I feel like musicians are conjurers of our time. They gather us to a place that sometimes is hard to get to. And if I may add to our land acknowledgement, the opportunity to be part of the Land Trust, to be in a role on behalf of our island and our community that has to do with holding and making decisions about and stewarding land, and to begin doing that in relationship with the indigenous people, for me, was enough to call a family back from Vancouver Island to this island. So it's a really core part of this work for me. And I even brought part of my land acknowledgement. Don't worry, this isn't a striptease sermon, but I did bring part of my land acknowledgement on my body. Can everybody hear me if I shout for a minute? So these are nettles. And this month in the Tulshutsi language, I wish I could pronounce, I'm working on pronouncing some Tulshutsi words. That isn't one I've gotten my mouth around quite yet, but this season it translates loosely as the month of gusting wind, which we recognize well, but it's also the time that they gather the nettles. So the Puyallup a few of them came over a couple of weeks ago to gather nettles, and I had the great gift of walking with them a little bit that morning, and I think it's an amusing tale about our relationship to land as non-Indigenous people, because they wrote and said, well, we'd like to come gather nettles, and all of us white folks were kind of like, well, the nettles aren't really up yet, you must be a little early. And eventually they patiently corrected us that, well, they gather the nettles when they just poke through the soil, and they gather when they're purple. It's just the top, tiny little tops. But there's a beautiful story that's been inspiring me lately. If you go home and Google how nettles saved the people. It's not my story to tell, but there's a Lower Elwha man, this beautiful indigenous storyteller, who tells this story about nettles' message in a dream to be brave and be strong for your people. So that's this time of year for the Puyallup, Squbapsh, traditional people of this land. I'm curious how long, hi Donna. Sorry, Donna and I have been corresponding and I hadn't seen her yet this morning. It's nice to see you. I'm curious how long folks have been on this island. Has anybody been here for just a year? Wonderful. Anybody less than a year? Like, who's in the 5-year club? Okay. 10-ish. I moved here in 2010, but I was away for 7 years, so I don't know how that counts. That probably puts me in the 10-ish range. Anybody in the 20s? 30s? Nice. 40 years? Any 50s? Nice. 50 plus, that's great. My daughter, I wasn't expecting to share this part of the story. My daughter and I, she was in the back seat. We were driving somewhere recently, and she just piped up in, she's 9, she piped up in that way that occasionally children just cut through the veil. And we weren't even talking about this topic, and we've moved a number of times in her short 9 years. And she said, Papa, when we move to a new place, I don't just change what I call home, I add to it. I think that's incredible. And I'm still trying to understand what it means. But for those of us who are 1 year in or 50 plus years in, we're adding this place to what we call home. How many folks have planted something yet this year? Nice. Gardens? Are we talking gardens? Anybody, trees, planted some trees? I've been mulling for quite a while, the last, I would say, couple years on this word hope, which is it's a tricky word right now, right? I think the cliche of that word is, I've been to a lot of talks about climate change, scientists who tell us, who lay out the data and the prospects and tell us as precisely as they can just how narrow our window for survival is. And inevitably in those talks, somebody raises their hand and says, well, do you still have hope? They ask the scientists, do you still have hope? And so the scientists, like, it's kind of a no-win question, like, do you want to stop kicking me in the shins? Do you crush people's will to live and answer no? Or do you answer, I have just a little bit of, it's like a hard question to answer in the way that people mean it, which the way they mean it is, can you tell me that it's all going to turn out all right? Do you think it's all going to turn out all right? And the truth is we don't know if it's all going to turn out all right. It is a pretty narrow window. But what dawned on me, and what I've kind of been sitting with over the last, I would say, year or two, is that there's something of hope. What's one thing that somebody's planted in their garden yet to this year? Peas, beets. Putting that beet seed in the ground, you're planning for it to come up. You're planning to eat the beets probably. So there's something of hope in that simple act. Planting a garden, planting a tree, there's clearing out invasive species on your property, whatever it is. It's something in tending land and relating to land. It's an act of choosing life, because you're putting something in that will add to life. I would go so far, I'm going to take this a step further than I have. I would say making yogurt or beer or it's choosing life. For me, there's something about doing that I'm like in a place because I'm cultivating life there. And so I'm adding it to what I call home, to take my daughter's definition. That definition feels really grounding to me in this wild political time. I started it as soon as the unthinkable happened in November. I was really thrown, like a lot of us probably. And I started reflecting and continue to kind of take courage from when I look at how have indigenous peoples made their way through several centuries of things beyond what probably most of us can imagine undergoing. How have they done that? And still here, still cultivating their language and their culture. And when I look at, I get the Puyallup Tribe's newsletter every week. if you're interested, you just go to their website and they'll share their news with you. What I love seeing in that is there's almost always something about health, just like their kids' health or their elders' health or a clinic. There's something about taking care of their bodies. There's something about meals and gathering family and community, and there's usually something about taking care of the land. They are not dividing it into those categories, but that's how it's kind of shaped in my mind. And those are all things we have agency over, regardless of political times, climate changes. We have agency over our bodies, our families, our communities, and our land. So, one of the things that I'm talking about a lot with our board and my colleagues and the community, any chance that I get from the Land Trust perspective, is this is an organization. Has anybody here ever been on the board of the Land Trust? Donna has. Donna and many others on the board and on the staff and as donors have lifted up this little organization that over 35 years has acquired and restored pieces of land around our island. The map looks different now than it did 35 years ago. There are places we can walk. There are places that have begun their journey of restoration to old growth. And that means that we have this foundation on which to think about whole watersheds, to think about the whole island, and to think about the island's relationship to this southern Salish Sea. So the way the Land Trust has proceeded for its kind of first few decades has been, we know the 5 main creeks on the island. Who knows the 5 big creeks? Judge, Shingle Mill. Needle's part of Shingle Mill. Christensen. Alice Creek. Ellisport? Yeah. That's not one of the 5, but it is a beautiful one. Fisher Pond is headwaters of Shingle Mill. Tahlequah is one of our creeks, and Fisher Creek. There's 27 around, so it's a little bit, we could arm wrestle over which one's bigger than which one, but being part of one of those watersheds has been a criteria for land that gets conserved, and being adjacent to one of the existing preserves. Those have been the criteria for whether a parcel is something that the Land Trust would take on, and then once acquired, clear out the invasives, haul away the concrete or the house or whatever pile of stuff is there, and start the process of planting and restoring. Really, back to that word hope, the Land Trust has kind of ridiculous hope, because we're buying this land, pledging to take care of it forever, when none of us are going to be here, and aspiring for it to be something in 300 years that it was 300 years ago. So that parcel by parcel process is how Land Trust has worked, and having enough of those kind of coming together in a web of landscape across the island is what lets us start to think, for example, about, well, what would it look like to restore the whole Shingle Mill watershed? From the headwaters, and each reach needs a different thing, and salmon would function in different parts of the creek, and the estuary for eelgrass and kelp and shellfish needs different things. This whole system, well, what it would be to think of the whole island as a system, and what would that look like? And then what would it be? There's estuaries, sometimes little tiny estuaries, but all around our shoreline. What would it be if all of those were healthy enough for the migrating Chinook that are the preferred food for our southern resident killer whales, that they could find shelter in each of those estuaries that starts to feed a salmon population that has our signature orca species having the food that they need. So there's, have had some really exciting conversations recently with the man who's the fisheries director for the Puyallup tribe, Russ Laidley. And he opened my eyes on this in saying he's been in his role 25 years or something. And of course, the namesake river for the Puyallup River, is where they focus a lot of their restoration work and fisheries recovery, species recovery. And he said, well, we have 3 big challenges on the Puyallup River. He was in that moment talking about steelhead, and it applies to salmon recovery as well. But for steelhead, for 20 years, they've released fry, they've done habitat restoration, everything basically that they've been able to think of to recover the steelhead population. And not once in 20 years have they been able to have an open steelhead fishery. So they've tried everything, and nothing's working. And the 3 biggest things that they struggle with are the temperatures rising in the Puyallup River and its tributaries, and there's basically nothing that we can do about it in a timeline of our lifetime. Then there's the pollution that you have to travel through to get out of Commencement Bay and onto your salmon business of heading to the ocean. And then there's the learned behavior of all the marine mammals, smart sea lions and seals, who realize there's a buffet at the mouth of the Puyallup River every year. If you hang out there, it's really tasty. So those 3 things have just dogged their recovery efforts, and he looks at Vashon and sees spring-fed creeks. So the temperatures here aren't snowpack dependent. When snowpack goes away, it doesn't change the temperature of our creeks. We have small creeks, not a giant river, which is a couple of things. It means that they don't have to swim out through Commencement Bay, for starters, and they aren't coming out a single point. So Russ and others that I've talked to, it kind of feels, I think, to us sometimes we're on our little island and we do our little things and we have our little island Vashon life that doesn't really matter to the rest of the world. But actually these small streams in a species recovery sense are, people are more, the scientific community is more and more curious and interested and supportive of what these small creeks could be providing. And Russ was telling us stories that he's received from elders of the Puyallup tribe of spending a lot of time on Vashon, remembering thriving salmon and steelhead runs on these creeks. So it is a past that could be, and even in our lifetime. If any of you, maybe some of you might have seen a story that was in last fall in the Seattle Times about Piper's Creek. Anybody happen to see? I see one nod here. It was, so Piper's Creek is about the size of Shingle Mill, way more hammered though. It's like, has all impervious surface area in its watershed almost. It's an urban environment. And they have been releasing salmon. They have what's called an imprint pond. So it looks like a feed tank, basically, with fry in it, salmon fry that they release about 20,000 a year. And what they do is they pour them in there and they let the creek water circulate through that tank for 6 weeks or so, and then they release them. So your imprint, it's called an imprint pond, you're imprinting the smell of that creek on those fish and hope that some of them come back. They've been doing this for 10, 15 years, and they had 3,000 fish come back to that creek this year. 3,000 fish. We get super excited when we have 35. And it's not unreasonable to assume that that would have been that and larger could have been on our creeks in the past. This was an island that likely had a population about what it does now, several hundred years ago, before contact, which I just find mind-blowing, that this island, this land supported that population entirely. A book for you called Becoming Kin by Patty Krawick. The full title is something like An Indigenous Call to Unforgetting Our Past and Reimagining Our Future. The first half or 2/3 of the book is weighty, I'll warn you. Many of you probably know some of these difficult histories genocidal histories we've had with indigenous people. But what I appreciate about how she unpacks, first of all, just seeing it in one place she does a beautiful job of it, and she ends each chapter with an invitation. What are you going to do with this information? One of them was spend the next week seeing places that indigenous names have been erased from places. So she has invitations at the end of each of those. And the second part of the book is her father is Anishinaabe, her mother is Ukrainian. So in her body, she's literally has a foot in each canoe. And she holds this tension of land that has been stewarded for millennia by indigenous people and then was taken by settler people, and has to kind of reconcile this in her body, which even for those of us who might not have family members who are indigenous, I think we're still standing in that place. Those of us who come with the aspirational principles like the Unitarian Universalists hold, this desire. I love the phrase from our Jewish brothers and sisters of Tikkun Olam. Does anybody know that phrase? It's a phrase that translates loosely the repairing of the universe. That's where we're standing, is this aspiration to repair and to not ignore what has happened, but also not just founder on those rocks and be stuck there. So in this book, she shares a word, an Anishinaabe word, that sounds something like Anikobijigan. Forgive, and for any Anishinaabe speakers in the audience, forgive my pronunciation. But it's the word that means, I love this, it's the word that means great-grandparent. It's also the word that means great-grandchild. So that word places me at the middle of the 7 generations. I've heard, many of you might have also heard this idea of thinking out 7 generations, that this is our task. And I have appreciated and admired and aspired to that for a long time. But learning that word, just moving that time scale, turned it all inside out for me. That we're standing at this center of those 7 generations, receiving gift from those who have gone before, from all who have, on this island, Tacho is the Tulshutsi name of this island. There are indigenous people gifting it to us. There are settlers who have cared for this land, Japanese American farmers who have cared for this land, all who have gifted it to us. It's in our care now. We're holding the flame. And it's our privilege and gift to steward it and pass it forward, to think about how all these watersheds fit together, how this whole island fits together, how our relationship to the landscape fits together, and how this little island breathes in and out this southern Salish Sea. I'm not turning the page, don't get nervous. I do want to go back to the poem that we started our morning with. And Julia asked me, did I have a poem that I wanted to share? And I chose that one because it turns out, I've learned this from Bianca Perla in the Nature Center, that most of the salmon, possibly all of them right now that spawn here, are what they call strays. They weren't born here. Was anybody in this room born here? We're all strays. There's strays, that's something like 10% of a population of a run doesn't come back to its original spot. Do they get lost? Are they adventurous? Does the hive mind know that we need to spread DNA around? I don't know. But we get a lot of strays. And this poem feels like it names that for the salmon and for us. Let us all seek to be like the lost salmon. Be not weary of your search for home. Search for it like it is your life calling, for it is your life calling. But do not despair when the home you find is not the home you left. May you indeed be destined to create new worlds, a home your kind has not yet dared to dream of. That's our task in the middle of the 7 generations. Hawadups Chalap. Thank you. Yeah, make sure you got all the right pieces.
So, let's take a moment in silence to reflect See what resonates within you, see what rises to the surface from Theron's time, connecting. And we are now going to pause the recording as we prepare for joys. And I light this final candle for all of the unspoken joys and concerns that are within this room, within this community, within our nation, around the world. Pretty wonderful light over there, isn't it? So, would you please join us as you feel comfortable in singing There Is a Love? The words are printed on the back of the laminated service or inside the cover. And we're going to resume recording as we finish the service, and it's time for our offertory. So our congregation engages beyond our walls for peace, social and economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of our planet and its inhabitants. And once a month, we contribute the financial offering to a regional, national, or international organization that aligns with our values. And this week's offering supports the Vashon Land Trust. So we've learned firsthand how important their work is, and we encourage you to donate generously for today's plate collection. So as we receive the offering, please join in singing We Give Thanks. And again, the words are printed. And now our final reading is from A Watershed Runs Through You. It's by Freeman House, and he worked decades physically working on watersheds and reflecting on the North California environment. So the same bioregion that we're part of, and it comes from this book that Gay loaned me. And when I originally excerpted this reading, it was many weeks ago, and now as I reread it, it just is driven into me with the circumstances that we have today. So let it resonate for you. We need to be determining our own strategies rather than letting them be determined by those who believe that life is for the taking. There's a lot of talk about watershed management in state and scientific circles, but people have been organizing themselves around watersheds forever. California Native peoples' tribal territories consistently relate to watersheds. And the Dust Bowl phenomena in the 1930s moved the Soil Conservation Service to conduct a nationwide education program about watersheds. Nature has an infinite number of strategies for its own ever-changing evolution. There's really no way to engage nature unless we engage it as it reveals itself around us. The reason that watersheds work so well as a place to begin is each of us can see them. There are ridge lines somewhere within the view of almost anyone. Watersheds have crisp boundaries that satisfy our linear left-brainness. And watersheds break themselves down into ever smaller configurations, from river to creek to swale, as if to accommodate the variety of human perceptual skills. And unlike phenomena such as global warming and ozone holes and acid rain, watershed injuries happen in our backyards, or if we live in urban areas, under the streets we drive on. They happen at a scale we can do something about, and when we do it, it makes us feel good. It makes us feel a little more whole. Watersheds require systematic study, and there's really no one better placed to do it than the people who live on or near the creek. And of course, once you begin such an engagement, once you have the experience under your belt of having built some stream bank armoring structure or cabled in some large woody debris or woven willow wattles or planted some alders along trash channels, your learning curve, both individually and collectively, is going to take a very steep turn upward. Once you get to monitoring the biotic characteristic of the waterway, it's an endless task. And there is literally no one else that can take note of the changes from season to season and from year to year but the people who live there. Do this with a group of comrades and neighbors for a few years, and an interesting thing starts to happen. Without thinking much about it, you have become related through the landscape that runs through your lives. You'll begin to take on some of the aspects of a single entity with many pairs of eyes. Now, the best and the worst thing about watershed organizing is the same thing. It forces you to talk to your neighbors. You'll find yourself needing to talk about things with your neighboring landowners that up until now, until you came along, they thought was nobody's business but their own. We're talking here about how we build and maintain our roads, where and how we cut trees, if at all, how we manage livestock. Now, after nearly 20 years, I've begun to think of the real work as getting neighbors to work together, coming to understand with them that land management strategies, isolated from the landscape by property lines, are the root of many of our problems. the very best land management on some acreage doesn't mean a whole lot if that acreage is surrounded by landowners who don't want to discuss the collective effects of your isolated activities on the landscape that surrounds us all. But just as your intelligence about watersheds has driven you into this uncomfortable situation, the watershed itself offers a solution. Over and over again, I've found that as long as discussions of this sort were carried on in terms of ideology, or as letters back and forth through regulatory agencies or one another, or through the courts, they most often resulted in polarization and the shutdown of any opportunity for face-to-face interaction. Just as often, I've found that if you can carry on your conversations right on the land you're talking about, a very large part of your disagreement can fall away. I have come to think that the most important thing we can do as people who live in watersheds and want our relationships with them to be positive is to pursue models of cooperative land use planning. It is the context in which our restoration and wildlife protection needs to be embedded if it's to endure. If we can get enough such models up and running, some of them are going to bring peace to the valley and health to the waters and soils. And now, our last song is number 163 in the hymnal you've got, For the Earth Forever Turning. Rowan's going to play the melody through once, and then we'll join in singing that hymn, 163. Do we have any worship song leaders who want to join us, or are we just going to swell it all up? Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn 163. And now we're going to extinguish the chalice with the reading by Brooke.
This is a quote from President Barack Obama. Progress is bumpy. It always has been. But because of dreamers and innovators and strivers and activists, progress has been this nation's hallmark. I'm fond of quoting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." I believe that. But I also believe that the arc of our nation, the arc of our world, does not bend towards justice or freedom or equality or prosperity on its own. It depends on us, on the choices we make, particularly at certain inflection points in history, particularly when big changes are happening and everything seems up for grabs.
I gotta practice that. Some of you get a lot better resonance than I do. Okay, so our formal service is now over, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Theron and Rowan and Gay and Brooke and Catherine on tech and our hospitality team 3 and all of you for participating today. So thank you for making this a wonderful circle. So I'm going to kick off the announcements. Our minister asked me to make one, and then anybody who has a VIUU announcement, come on up. So Reverend Victoria is thrilled to offer a brand new small group built around spiritual practice. It's going to be called Practice Matters, and she will lead the group on the first Thursday of every month. Well, for 3 months, starting April 3rd. Meeting at the lunch hour, and you're welcome to bring snacks to share. So the dates are April 3rd, May 1st, and June 5th. The group is open to the first 9 people who respond. So about this group, there's a growing interest in spiritual practice, both inside and outside our UU faith tradition. And Practice Matters supports this curiosity through learning and doing. In other words, Practice Matters doesn't just explain various featured spiritual practices, it helps people experience them. So it's going to be following our 2024-25 monthly service themes, and will feature a spiritual practice related to each month's theme. Participants will receive a packet and guidance on experiencing these practices prior to the meeting. And then at the group meeting, participants can share their experiences and insights with one another. So the kinds of spiritual practices run the gamut from breathing practices and walking a labyrinth to fasting. So to sign up, if you would email Reverend Victoria it's minister@VashonIslandUU.org. If you're not sure about that, just send an email to the info and it'll get forwarded. Just make it clear what you're commenting on. And I do want to point out that not to get confused, but Practice Matters is not the same as this, okay? So we have 2 new things beginning here, and of course we're so flexible we can handle that, okay? Great. Okay, Beth, do you want to make an announcement?
There's been a wonderful response to circle dinners. Our first circle dinner is actually not a potluck. George Butler is hosting. Alex and her beloved Jim are going to be speaking. It's going to be East Indian food. There is 1 opening left. The second is being hosted by Brooke, and that is full. And we have 3 more. The sign-up sheet is over by the food zone. It's really a wonderful thing. It's a chance for people to spend time with each other a little bit longer than coffee hour in a little more intimate setting. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Catherine. Good morning, everyone. So Tuesday, the Social Justice Group is having our committee meeting. The newsletter says 4, but that was wrong. We're meeting at 3 because Reverend Victoria is going to join us. So if you're interested in that group, come Tuesday at 3. It's the Zoom. So last time I was up here, I told you guys about a grant that we applied for. Well, good news, we got the money. Yay! It's going to be a team effort, but we're going to be upgrading stuff. And then the last time I came up here, we were 47 people in person, and I think we are 50 today, thanks to our friends that came in the back. So that's a lot of people, 54. Yeah, math I'm not good at. That's a lot of people in our parking lot. And Burton Community Church has been playing a little passive-aggressive game with parking cones, and it pisses me off. And I don't know if they have reached out to the board about it, but two can play at that game. So we're going to be kind of staking our own claim to parking spots. And if they want to engage in a conversation about it, they can. And they also need to fill in all the holes. So maybe that can be our small little piece of activity that we do together.
And just kudos to the tech people that have been involved in that process for so long. And I wanted to let you know there's a testimonial. Sally Fox wasn't able to come to the service last week, but she listened to it on Zoom. She said it was phenomenal. The music was beautiful. Everything was clear. It was great. So, okay. And the announcement that I have from Tanya is involved with the Social Justice Committee, and it's RSVP for the UCLA's ACLU's Know Your Rights training. Oh my gosh. So I'll just read a little bit about this. The Trump administration has been gearing up for mass deportations and other violations of our rights since day one, threatening the safety of millions of families. Join one of the ACLU's Know Your Rights trainings to learn about your rights and understand how you can protect communities facing these escalating threats. We'll be hosting 2 trainings every month, so you can select the date and content that works best for you below. So there's a Zoom link. Marilee and Tanya have signed up for March 20th at 5 p.m., and there are other ones through April 7th. At 1 p.m., April 24th at 5 p.m., also available. And it's involved with community passageways. And also, so the title is How to Fight ICE Raids Using Your Smartphone. So, so there's a lot of information about this, but it's really important. So join community passageways along with 3 other local nonprofits for Cocktails for a Cause, a free event hosted by the Columbia Tower Club on Wednesday, April 23rd at 5:30. Cocktails for a Cause at the Columbia Tower Club tickets, Wednesday, April 23rd at 5:30 p.m. Okay, so there are handouts for this, and how about I leave them on the back table? Yeah, question, Donna. Yes. Yes, we'll do that. Awesome. Okay, thank you. Tanya, anything else? Okay.
Okay, last call on announcements. All right. So, before we send each other off with Go Now in Peace, just a little word about circulating through the food area. We want to try to spread people out a little bit. There's a lot of congestion. People tend to grab food and then stand there, and then we lose our navigation. So we can come back and sit in the seating area back by the sofa. The sun is shining. You can push the door open and stand outside and have fresh air and great views. So let's try to spread out a little bit once we get some food, okay? All right, so let's send each other off with Go Now in Peace. Go now in peace. And I understand there's birthday cake from the birthday boy, so.